Well, hello there. I'm Richard Parr and you're watching Sportuccino. We are live on Tuesday, the 7th of March 2017. I nearly said 2016. I have no idea why, but welcome to the show. Lots to cover today. Chelsea moving 10 points clear at the top of the English Premier League with their 21st win of the season, beating West Ham 2-1. We're going to discuss that on today's Sportuccino. We'll also look ahead to the Champions League games between Arsenal and Bayern Munich and Napoli and Real Madrid. Lots to look forward to in the world of football there. Plus, we will review the latest WWE pay-per-view, Fastlane. Gareth Messenger, the wrestling expert, will be joining me on the programme to dissect all of that card and look ahead to WrestleMania on the programme. Let me know your thoughts on WWE Fastlane. I would love to hear from you this morning. But let's start the day with our morning sports headlines. Chelsea moved 10 points clear at the top of the English Premier League after a 2-1 win at West Ham. Manchester United forward Zlatan Ibrahimovic and Bournemouth defender Tyrone Mings are charged with violent conduct by the Football Association. Cricket is to introduce sendings off and limits on the size of bats. And Andrew Bogut breaks his leg 58 seconds into his Cleveland Cavaliers debut. Poor old Andrew Bogut there, breaking his leg 58 seconds into his debut for the Cleveland Cavaliers against Miami Heat. Disappointing for him after that move. We can discuss that later in the programme. Before we talk more about sport, I want to tell you how you can help support our show. And that is by buying some of our merchandise from Sportuccino.com. We've got great things such as t-shirts, hoodies. We've got the Sportuccino mug, which I enjoy my coffee from every single morning. So if you'd like to support our programme, go to Sportuccino.com/merchandise and you can get yourself some fantastic gifts, perhaps. Give it to your brother, your sister, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your mum, your dad. Help support our show and show some love to some family members too. All right, so Chelsea are 10 points clear at the top of the English Premier League. First half strike from Eden Hazard, plus a kind of kneed-in, shinned-in, tap-in from Diego Costa in the 50th minute, put them 2-0 up. A late Lanzini goal made it 2-1 at full-time. West Ham went into that game with a little bit of confidence because Chelsea had only had 4 defeats all season, and one of them was in the EFL Cup to West Ham at the London Stadium, albeit very different sides. But that was one thing, one bit of confidence they could have going into that match. But this Chelsea side are in imperious form. They've now won 21 league games this season. They've got 66 points, only the 7th team in history to reach 66 points at this stage of the season. A couple of other stats here. They've now got 118 Premier League derby victories, London derby wins. That's more than any other team, just overtaking Arsenal in that. They're also the only side to use all 3 substitutes in every single game. Now that's something really interesting. When I went to see Brighton face Newcastle the other week, I felt that Chris Hughton didn't make enough changes early enough. I also remarked that Rafa Benitez always makes a substitution around about the 63rd minute because there's a great book called The Numbers Game by, I think it's Chris Anderson, and there's another co-author as well. And they mention that statistically the best time to make a substitution is around that 60-minute mark, and Benitez does it every single game. It's interesting that Costa makes all 3 changes every single game. I wonder if that's something to do with statistics or is it to do with instincts? I would love to get your thoughts on all of that. Now, one other thing to mention is that Chelsea face Man United next in the FA Cup quarter-finals, and then they are away to Stoke. We'd love to get your thoughts on, can anyone stop Chelsea in this title race? Let us know on the Facebook page and on the YouTube page. It'd be really good to get your thoughts on all of that. And of course, we're talking a little bit more about Chelsea on our Twitter page. Let's have a look. So we want to know who will finish the top goal scorer in the English Premier League this season. Will it be Harry Kane? He's scoring goals for fun, got 2 at the weekend. Will it be Romelu Lukaku? He got 1 at the weekend. Will it be Diego Costa? Of course, he got one against West Ham on Monday night. Will it be Alexis Sanchez, who sat on the bench? Their leading goal scorer, 20 goals this season, 17 in the Premier League, and all he did was sit on the bench, in fact, as Liverpool beat them 3-1. Let us know your thoughts on that. Who will finish the top goal scorer in the English Premier League this season? Will it be Kane? Will it be Lukaku? Will it be Costa? Or will it be Sanchez? Would love to get your thoughts on that. Let's have a look at the result of our last poll on our Twitter page at Sportuccino. And we wanted to know whether you thought that David Haye should retire from boxing. And 55% of you say yes, he should retire after he lost to Tony Bellew at the O2 in London on Saturday. He since has a surgery on his Achilles. So 55% of you think he should retire. That's a pretty close poll there. And a lot of you think that maybe he should also continue fighting. We'll have to wait and see what happens there. Now let's move on from boxing to another grappling sport, and that is WWE, sports entertainment as a lot of you know it as. And this Sunday was the WWE pay-per-view Fastlane, the final pay-per-view before the biggest show of the year, the granddaddy of them all, WrestleMania. And it really did set up the event at Fastlane. And I'm going to run through the card of the highs and lows, and I'm delighted to bring back to the programme for a second time Gareth Messenger now joins me live from Doha, Qatar. Good morning to you, Gareth.
Hi, Richard. How are you, mate?
I'm very good, thank you. So, Gareth, good. A lot of people have the WWE Network, $9.99. But let's say you live in America and you don't have the WWE Network and you're really excited to see this pay-per-view, and it's got Goldberg and Kevin Owens and Charlotte and Bayley, and you've worked hard all week and you've saved all your money and you've paid $45 for this pay-per-view. How would you feel at the end of the event having paid $45, Gareth?
I'd want a refund straight away. It was arguably one of the worst pay-per-views I've seen in the last 5 years, especially. It was dreadful. Like, not so much the wrestling. There were good elements of the wrestling in there, but the booking is just. If you're an avid WWE or pro wrestling fan, you want to see good booking. And Raw and Fastlane in particular was a classic example of out of touch writers, out of touch producers who are not engaging with what the fans want. And unfortunately, it was a poor show.
I'm sure there are lots of negatives which we'll go through. If there was one high for you, what would it be, Gareth?
I actually thought the cruiserweight match between Neville and Jack Gallagher, the two British lads, was excellent. Like, they really put on a really, really good show. It was interesting to watch. It was fun to watch, and I think both of them did the pay-per-view proud in what was a generally really, really poor show for WWE.
Yeah, I was pretty impressed with them too. I really like Neville's heel character. I think he's got very good at that. And I like the fact that he's reduced the high-flying moves but felt like he had to bring them out for that match. I thought that was excellent. So that's the high of the high. What's the low of the low?
Oh, there's plenty of lows. What? Plenty of lows. What I don't get is they spent months building up certain performers. Braun Strowman is a classic example. They've dedicated 18 months to building up this guy to be a monster of a man. Nobody can stop him. He's unbeaten, and he loses at a very poor pay-per-view against a very poor wrestler in Roman Reigns, who is being pushed to the moon and back, which is not necessarily his fault. It's the fault of probably Vince McMahon, if we're being honest. But Braun Strowman's been built up over the last 18 months to be this unstoppable man. And you'd like to think that a storyline like that would come to a conclusion at WrestleMania, the biggest stage of them all in terms of pro wrestling. And they did it at Fastlane. And it doesn't make sense. And then you have the other example of Charlotte. Charlotte, whose pay-per-view record, I think she'd won like her last 18 pay-per-views, something along those lines. and then she loses in a really obscure ending to Bayley, who, she does well, Bayley, but I don't think she's quite got the charisma that she had on NXT yet. I mean, she's still improving, but it was just a very weird way to do things. Strowman losing his record, Charlotte losing her record, and even Nia Jax. I read this morning that Nia Jax is apparently unbeaten in pay-per-views, and she lost to Sasha Banks in what was again a very strange ending. But I've read that they actually changed the ending of that match at the very last minute. Nia Jax was supposed to win, but they changed it and Sasha Banks won. And, while I really like Sasha Banks, she's done excellent over the last year, especially the Head in a Cell match with Charlotte. But it was just very odd. And the booking of some of these wrestlers it's just way beyond what anybody was really expecting, to be honest. It was quite poor.
A few weeks ago, I was on the Hooked On Wrestling podcast talking about Braun Strowman, and I compared him to the likes of Tensai and Umaga, where he's pushed, and then ultimately destroyed by Super Cena, or in this case, Roman Reigns. So it's disappointing that they haven't actually fully pushed him. But, from a booking sense, it does make sense to have Roman Reigns going in strong if the plan was always for The Undertaker. But you just, as you said, it's like he's been pushing Strowman, and now what happens to Strowman? What does he do at WrestleMania? Does he have anything to do at all? What did you think about the surprise matches, such as Cesaro versus Jinder Mahal and The Big Show against Rusev? Did you enjoy them?
No. In a nutshell, no. They were just a waste of time. Like, they're just cobbled together, no thought process. They're obviously trying to go down the road of some sort of feud between Jinder Mahal and Rusev, which, fair enough, do that. But, it's not, again, that's not a spectacle that I would really want to watch. But, there was Rusev a year or two ago was on a real high. He was facing Cena. He was in a good feud with Cena, and he's had some decent feuds along the way. But again, like if they're trying to set up Rusev against Jinder Mahal, I don't understand the point. And this is like something I've been complaining about over the last couple of months, particularly with Raw, not with SmackDown. And it's been proven by the ratings. SmackDown has been beating Raw in the ratings, and that's a big thing, considering that Raw is seen as WWE's flagship show. But I didn't see the point in it's just it's like they've put names in a hat, picked them out, and gone, oh yeah, he will face him. There's no thought process to it. It's just, we need some matches. Let's put that person with that person and hope that the fans like it. And that's what it is to me at the minute. There's no concrete feud. There's nothing going on. And again, just cobbled together. I mean, it was nice to see Big Show. I thought Big Show put in a pretty solid performance, and Cesaro's a world-class athlete, so you're always going to expect standards from them. But it was just really strange. Like, the whole thing was just odd, and it wasn't enjoyable to watch. It's the first pay-per-view in a while. I've sat there and I've gone, I'm really not enjoying any of this. Apart from the cruiserweight match, which I thought was, a good watch, and the main event. We'll probably talk about that in a moment. The main event was, again, it was just all this hype for nothing, and it was just really disappointing.
I'm going to get on to that in just a moment. Got a couple of points towards that, but we've got a comment here on the Facebook page. Dominic Chase, he's saying, why are WWE so obsessed with Roman? What do you think, Gareth?
I don't think WWE are obsessed with Roman. I think Vince McMahon is obsessed with Roman. I think that there's this agenda at WWE, and particularly with Vince and maybe other higher up officials, that Roman Reigns is seen as the new John Cena, the new guy who can take the company forward. And the fact of the matter is, while they've kept pushing him, it's turned more fans away. Hence, the viewers on Raw have decreased and people are going to SmackDown. Now, whether that's just a case of, in fact, the actual writing on Raw is worse than SmackDown, I think there's an element to that too. It's not just Roman Reigns. I think the whole story, the stories and the bookings on SmackDown are far, and even the wrestling is far superior on SmackDown than it is on Raw. But with Roman Reigns, for the last year, maybe 2 years, he's been forced down people's throat. And people want to watch wrestling and decide for themselves who they like and who they don't like. And for Roman Reigns to be given opportunity after opportunity after opportunity, again, it's not his fault, but people don't like it. And I hope now that this feud with Undertaker, which was teed up on Raw, I hope there's a heel turn involved, because Roman Reigns as a nice guy isn't working, and it hasn't worked for ages. He was excellent in the Shield when they were all seen as bad guys, but he needs to turn heel. He needs to become the bad guy. And I think people may warm to him a bit more, but yeah, it's just not working, this little Roman project. And unfortunately for him, it will eventually crash and burn, and he will lose all momentum eventually, regardless of how many pushes he gets, because he's just not going to get the fans back in.
Well, let's do a little bit of housekeeping on the rest of the card just before we get to the main event. The other two matches, Samoa Joe defeating Sami Zayn. It seems to me they don't really know exactly what they're doing with Samoa Joe right now, Gareth.
Yeah, there again is another example of just throwing him into any old match, and they've put him with Sami Zayn because they probably clashed on NXT and they know each other and they've wrestled each other all over the world, which is fair enough, but nothing concrete. They are setting up for a new faction to be created, which will involve Triple H, Kevin Owens, and Samoa Joe. And whether it's seen as like the NXT army or something along those lines, we don't know. But they are setting up for that faction. Hence why, if you watched Raw last night, Samoa Joe got involved with and helped Kevin Owens during the little conversation back and forth between him and Chris Jericho. Now that's sort of like the stepping stone towards this new faction. But until WrestleMania comes, I don't see that happening. So with Joe, it's very interesting to see where he's going to go next. They keep teasing him and Sami Zayn. If he was facing Zayn at WrestleMania, I don't think people would be as engaged as they would have been, say, 4 weeks ago, because it's been done over and over again and people were bored. I think Joe needs a new challenge, but I think this new faction, when it comes into play eventually, there'll be a bit of interest in Joe, and it'll be interesting to see where he goes forward. But yeah, I agree with you, mate. They're sort of, again, another classic example of like, he's here, but we don't actually know what we're doing with him, so we're just going to throw him in any old match and see how he does.
He's hugely talented. I love some of his stuff in TNA. Hopefully they can get him on track. Speaking of a faction, I would absolutely love it if they got Pete Dunne involved after that little bit they did on the WWE UK Championship with him and Triple H after he did the attack on the first night. I think that would be really intriguing as well. We'll have to wait and see what happens there. And the other match we should quickly cover is the tag team match, Gallows and Anderson retaining against Enzo and Cass. It looks like it's going to be at WrestleMania, Gallows and Anderson versus Enzo and Cass, or Cesaro and Sheamus. Do we care?
No. No, we really don't. I really like Gallows and Anderson. Most Bullet Club fans will like Gallows and Anderson just because of what they've done in New Japan Pro Wrestling and all around the world, and even what they've done in WWE. They've done their impact was great when they first came here, and they've been quietly sort of bubbling under the surface, and they're deservedly champions. Enzo and Cass have lost all sort of momentum over last year. They've had nothing serious. They haven't competed for titles. Now I would expect them to go and win at WrestleMania because it would get a massive pop, because people do like Enzo and Cass, but I think that not so much the chemistry, I just think the interest in what they were doing is not what it once was. They were put into random feuds again, like with Rusev, when Enzo was tied in with Rusev and Lana, and it made no sense whatsoever. So it's just, again, no one cares. Nobody cares. And unfortunately, if it hasn't got the New Day in, the tag team division has been sort of like a sitting duck for the last 5 or 10 years now, and no one really cares. And when the Hardys left, and then the Dudleys left, and then even Edge and Christian to an extent, APA, that was what the Attitude Era tag teams were the best. And nowadays they've just been sort of clutching at straws, trying to cobble together anybody who they might think might work well. And the classic example of that was the New Day. That's a success story, and they deserve a lot of credit for that. But no, pointless, waste of time. And let's just say that's worthy of turning the TV over for 5 minutes if it means I have to watch a match like that again.
I think it might move to the kickoff. I've got a feeling that's what will happen there. Of course, the Hardys are now free agents, and Gallows and Matt Hardy had a little tete-a-tete on Twitter recently. Could we see that happen, do you think?
I think we need to see that happen. Not as the old Hardys, though. I think if WWE wanted Matt and Jeff back, they need to bring back. They need to bring Matt's broken Matt gimmick and Brother Nero. They're the gimmicks that people want to see at the minute. Matt Hardy's, for anyone who doesn't watch TNA, Matt Hardy has released this new gimmick, which has been around for a little while now, but it's a new gimmick. It's not old Matt Hardy with the tables, ladders, and chairs back in the day. It's broken Matt, and it's unbelievable. It's arguably the best gimmick in the world right now. It's fantastic to watch. Jeff Hardy's playing a key role in it as well, as he always does. But WWE, I've read that Matt Hardy is very concerned that if he goes to WWE, they're going to take control of the broken Matt gimmick. And Matt's had a lot of control at TNA over what he does and his content and his stories. Now, if WWE were to take that away from him, I do fear that they'll stifle him and they'll stifle Jeff. So where do they go from there? Because, it'll be interesting to see. I'd like to see them back, but it needs to be with that gimmick, because if it's not, then it's not worth it. People want to see that. People want to see that, and I don't think it will happen unless it's that gimmick, but we'll have to wait and see. It'll be interesting though. WrestleMania around the corner. I know they are free agents, but I do believe that they're also considering an offer from Ring of Honor as well. They appeared at a Ring of Honor show recently where they said that they had agreed. They became the new Ring of Honor champions, if tag team champs, if I'm not mistaken. But we'll see. Maybe that's just sort of like a part-time deal. We will see. But WrestleMania around the corner. That'll be good to watch. Hardy's against the club. That'll be good.
Yeah, Bully Ray, of course, had a fantastic spell at TNA as a singles competitor. And then when they came back to the WWE as the Dudleys, it was just a tribute act, effectively. And I don't think anyone really wants to see a tribute act at this stage of the Hardys' career. We'll have to wait and see what happens there. So, Goldberg beat Brock Lesnar at Survivor Series. Everyone was looking forward to it. Everyone was shocked. And in my opinion, I quite enjoyed the fact it was so fast and so shocking and so surprising at Survivor Series. Goldberg then goes to the Royal Rumble. He defeats quite a lot of superstars. He's a bit clunky doing it, bashing people over, kicking people. You're thinking, oh, that probably hurts. That doesn't look great. And you're thinking, all right, they're leading towards Brock Lesnar versus Goldberg at WrestleMania. And then Goldberg faces Kevin Owens, and you're thinking, they'll give him a few more minutes, won't they? They'll warm them up a little bit, because they can't do another 1-minute match at WrestleMania, can they? And of course, within 44 seconds, I think it's probably less, but I saw 44 seconds today, Goldberg defeats Kevin Owens to become the Universal Champion. And he'll go on to face Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. Now, we already mentioned at the top that $45 is the price of a pay-per-view for Fastlane. I think it's probably more for WrestleMania. Is it worth it if you're only going to get 1 minute's worth of action of Goldberg versus Brock Lesnar? And if you think about it, normally a main event could be anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes. And instead you have to fill those 20 to 40 minutes with Big Show versus Rusev and Cesaro versus Jinder Mahal. Is there a real fear that you could be spending a lot of money between Lesnar and Goldberg and getting nothing? I looked forward very much to WrestleMania 20, and it was one of the most disappointing things ever when Goldberg faced Brock Lesnar. What do you think, Gareth?
When WrestleMania 20 came around, both Lesnar and Goldberg were leaving WWE. And that's partly the reason why it was such a disappointing match, is because neither of them cared. It was their last match. It was their last hurrah. I don't think this is a similar scenario. I think it might be Goldberg's last match. But I don't think it'll be Brock's last match. Everyone criticises Brock Lesnar for being a part-timer. He just comes and goes as he pleases, and he earns X amount of millions of dollars. I read $11 million a year, which is extortionate amount of money. I read in 2016 he wrestled for a total of 52 minutes in the whole of 2016, and he earned $11 million in that period.
Wow.
Now, if you're a wrestling fan, you are instantly drawn to the likes of Goldberg and Brock Lesnar. They're massive draws. They are just massive draws because they are. That's just who they are. That's who people want to see. Whether they're part-timers or not, that's besides the point. You want to see them. It's like, regardless of what anyone says about John Cena, if John Cena's on a pay-per-view, you want to see it. If AJ Styles is on a pay-per-view, you want to see it because they're big names and they're excellent at what they do. With Brock and Goldberg, if I'm paying for a pay-per-view, I can understand why Survivor Series was 1 minute 20, and I think that was a real shock. It was a real shock. It was really left field. Nobody expected that. The Royal Rumble, again, fair enough. Now, what annoyed me about Fastlane is, fair enough, they needed to face Goldberg with Kevin Owens because they needed Goldberg to have the title. I understand that completely. And I called it about 3 weeks ago. I said, when Kevin Owens turned on Jericho, we already knew that Owens would be facing Goldberg at Fastlane. And I called it and I said, Jericho will interfere in the Fastlane event and cost Owens the title. Lo and behold, that's what happened. I like the way that Owens kept going in and out of the ring and in and out of the ring at Fastlane. It was quite interesting. He was sort of teasing Goldberg. And then Jericho's music hit at exactly the right point, which was good. And then it's like spear, jackhammer, 1, 2, 3. Goldberg's the new Universal Champion. That's good because it sets up Goldberg with the title against Lesnar, and then Owens against Jericho. And if you watched Raw last night, it'll be for the United States Championship, which inevitably you'd like to think Owens will win because Jericho's leaving WWE to go and work on his band Fozzy. Now, here's the thing. I watched Fastlane and I was disappointed that the match was only 40 seconds, as you said, or whatever it was, because it was all this hype again, Goldberg in another match. And I think there becomes a point where you can do the quick wins too many times. And I think WWE have just overdone it now. Survivor Series worked fine. Royal Rumble worked fine. This one didn't need it. It needed to be longer. It needed to be long of actual wrestling. That's what people pay to see. They pay to see entertainment and wrestling. Now, I would argue that whilst wrestling purists like myself and like you and like others who are watching, they get why Kevin Owens is walking around the ring and he's wasting time, and they get why people will tune in for that, and they understand the concept of it. But here's my problem. People want to see wrestling. And here's the difference between Raw and SmackDown. On SmackDown, you get wrestling. On Raw, it's a 3-hour show. You'll get 2 hours of promos and 1 hour of wrestling, maybe, or an hour and a half of promos, hour and a half of wrestling. On SmackDown, it's a 2-hour show. You'll get an hour and a half of wrestling and 30 minutes of promos. That's what people want to see. It's entertainment, but people aren't entertained by one man walking around a ring for 5 minutes and another man standing there groaning and grunting because he's Goldberg and that's his gimmick. So, yeah, I mean, it tees it up nicely for WrestleMania, the two feuds. But it was, again, another one that was a waste of time. Could have just been done on a Raw. Thanks very much. And that's what Fastlane felt to me. It was a Raw. It wasn't Fastlane. It wasn't the last pay-per-view before WrestleMania. The last pay-per-view people are going to tune into. It was just a typical Raw. And in fact, Raw last night was actually better than Fastlane. So what was the point in people paying $45 to watch a pay-per-view when really you can watch Raw for free, pretty much, or on, like, if you're in the UK, you can watch it on Sky, or if, and just watching a better show than what Fastlane was. Fastlane wasted time, and it just felt like the writers going, we'll just do this, and then we'll tee it up for Raw because that's all we care about. Yeah.
Well, it's been great to get your thoughts this morning, Gareth. We've run out of time. We've spoken so much about wrestling. It's so easy to do it when you're so passionate. Quickly, how can we follow you on Twitter, Gareth?
G_Messenger. I'm usually tweeting wrestling, all sorts, football, Chelsea top of the league. Thanks very much.
Well, Gareth Messenger, thank you for your great thoughts this morning. Thank you for being on Sportuccino.
Thanks, Richard. Cheers, mate.
Great to talk to Gareth this morning on Sportuccino. Quickly talk about the Champions League before we go. Of course, it is Arsenal against Bayern Munich. No team has progressed with a 4-goal deficit from the first leg. Arsenal, of course, are 5-1 down against Bayern Munich. Still no decision on whether Alexis Sanchez will play for Arsenal, but there's no Mesut Ozil. He's out through illness. But Per Mertesacker might make his first appearance for the Gunners. He, of course, is their club captain, the 32-year-old former Werder Bremen defender. While Bayern Munich, they will not have Philipp Lahm. He's suspended, and Jerome Boateng, he is also still injured. He's been out since November. Meanwhile, the other game is between Napoli and Real Madrid. Real Madrid have a 3-1 lead from the first leg. They didn't have Ronaldo at the weekend in their 4-1 win over Eibar. He had a little niggling injury, and Gareth Bale was suspended. Both are expected to return for tonight's game. There won't be any Rafael Varane, though. He is injured. So those are the games tonight in the Champions League. It is Arsenal against Bayern Munich, and it is Napoli against Real Madrid. We will cover all of them on Wednesday's Sportuccino. Just before we go, let's get one quick reminder of today's sports headlines. Chelsea moved 10 points clear at the top of the English Premier League after a 2-1 win at West Ham. Manchester United forward Zlatan Ibrahimovic and Bournemouth defender Tyrone Mings are charged with violent conduct by the Football Association. Cricket is to introduce sendings off and limits on the size of bats. And Andrew Bogut breaks his leg 58 seconds into his Cleveland Cavaliers debut. Well, we mentioned cricket in those headlines, and I'll just bring you the latest of the test match between India and Australia, the second test. Australia are chasing 188 runs to win. India are all out for 274 in the morning session today. They're currently 98 for 4. They require another 90 runs from 6 wickets. Not Michael Ricketts, 6 wickets remaining. We'll bring you an update on that on Wednesday. Sportuccino will be back live at 8 GMT on Facebook, YouTube and on Periscope. You can also watch all of the episodes back at sportuccino.com and also listen to us on iTunes. Please give us a rating and review. All right, I've been Richard Pye. You've been watching Sportuccino. Thanks to Gareth Messenger for everything WWE. We will be back on Sportuccino on Wednesday. Goodbye.